You're listening to Des Plaines, Illinois Community Access Radio, brought to you by the Batman Universe Podcast Network.
Bruce Wayne's World, fighting crime, Harvey Dent, ba-na-na-na-na-na-na-na, Bruce Wayne's World.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, Jimmy.
Hey, Joe. How am I coming through?
I'm coming through all right. How about am I coming through?
You're coming through fine. How? Hello, Dimitri.
Dimitri.
That's you ever see Dr. Strangelove?
Yes, but I don't. Yes, Dimitri.
It's when Peter Sellers is the president calling.
Yeah. The Russian, president or whatever. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So, wow. To what did I owe the pleasure of this phone call?
This random phone call?
Scheduled, phone call.
I just wanted to see if you saw that new Justice League movie yet.
I did twice.
You saw it twice?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. You went yesterday night, right?
Correct.
And Thursday night.
This last night, yeah. And then we evidently got invited by Dusty to the call-in review show, and
yeah, I read the email right as it was starting, so would have enjoyed that. My bad on that.
Well, that's all right. I probably would have gotten yelled at or something.
I don't know about
speaking
that, man.
Freely.
So yeah, go ahead.
We didn't see it in the same theater.
No, I saw it separately. I saw it Thursday night with Daniel, who is very sick right now. Otherwise, I think he wanted to join. Maybe he'll pop in. Who knows? My theater was mostly empty. It was a 9 p.m. showtime. And you told me you went at 6 and yours was pretty empty too, right?
Well, yeah, and I don't really give much credence to that anymore.
No, there's so many showtimes now.
Right. It used to be like when The Dark Knight, for instance, came out, there was a midnight showing, and that was the sold first out, show. And we talked about this last episode, and I had to see the 2:00 showing. There was no 6:00, 8:00, 9:30. It was select theaters had a midnight showing, so it was spread out. Now, suffice to say, when I went to see it on Sunday night, after a couple of days, the theater was packed. I mean, packed. So, and everyone seemed to have a good reception about it. And I mean, there are moments that we'll get into just my reaction to it. I definitely left that theater a lot happier than when I saw BVS. I saw BVS 3 times in the theater, mainly because I was like, why didn't I like this? I don't understand why I did not like this. I saw it 3 times in the theaters, and I fell asleep every single time I watched it in the theaters.
Yeah.
I think the director's cut, and I'm knowingly a Zack Snyder apologist, self-described, but the director's cut I found a lot more palatable. It still has flaws in it, but I generally like that movie. I would say and it still has great scenes in it, don't get me wrong, but by the time in the theater, by the time it got to those scenes, I was already falling asleep. So
yeah,
this movie did not do that. There are some problems with it, but I think it's nitpicking to point them out. I mean, there's room for improvement, don't get me wrong. But for the disparity, and I may be jumping ahead, but obviously,
yeah, that's okay. I mean, so how do you want to do this? I mean, I could talk. I mean, do you want just knee-jerk reaction first, or do we want to talk about kind of the atmosphere that's kind of been built around this movie lately?
I guess we can. I kind of segued into it already, so we can discuss the Rotten Tomatoes controversy, I guess, that surrounds DC films, and then maybe get into a spoiler-free review. Because I'm sure, unless you wanted something to add about your experience in the theaters, it sounded like it was pretty much the same thing.
I mean, other than the fact that in a mostly empty theater, there were several moments that I couldn't hold back my positive emotions, and I think applauding is stupid in the theater. I applauded a few times. So that's kind of my knee-jerk reaction,
There were definitely people applauding. It didn't have that vibrato, like that rising sense of like everyone's standing ovation, like the ending of Batman Begins or Dark Knight when I saw it in theaters, because it was a packed theater. That's it. When I first, even for that 6 o'clock showing on Thursday, it was packed in the sense that the middle of the theater was packed. Like, there was plenty of seats, but all the nerds had just conglomerated to the middle. So it was a little bit like that, but there just still wasn't, you could hear the oohs and ahs, but it wasn't threefold as many, you know what I'm saying? Like, as you would have in a packed theater. So it was a little bit muted in that sense. But once again, I feel that's more to blame with just the excessive amount of screenings. I've seen the same thing with Marvel movies. I've been out opening night, and I haven't seen packed theaters unless I've seen a later Saturday evening showing or something like that. If I go to the earliest showing, it's generally not filled to capacity of any movie.
The last movie I saw that was, and this is slightly off topic, that was really packed was when I saw Blade Runner 2049, and it surprised me how packed that was, and what surprised me more was how poorly that film did at the box office. So, it's anecdotal evidence if you go to an empty theater, whatever. But
what show is that, by the way? Like, just
for the Blade Runner?
Yeah.
I think it was release day at like 7 p.m. So.
Okay. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, I saw it too, and I saw it maybe, I think it was like the Saturday, like an evening or something like that, or a Sunday evening, and it was filled, but it wasn't like, there were still seats, It's what I would expect on a Saturday night, even if it, for practically any movie, I guess is what I would expect, but whatever,
so,
I don't know.
So I'm going to if we're going to start talking about other people's reaction to this, I'm going to read a few blurbs from Rotten Tomatoes quoting critics. So, Sarah Stewart, New York Post, a pointless flail of expensive, yet somehow cheap-looking CGI that no amount of tacked-on quips or even Godot's luminescent star power can rescue. And that's a top critic. That was a 2 out of 4 review.
I think half of that sentiment.
Sure.
Like, I think there's problems with it, but I think I looked past some of those problems. At the end of the day, I think I would like to just say this. It's not Citizen Kane, okay? I didn't go into it.
And you don't review it as such. You review it.
Right.
We were kind of talking about this the other day.
Right. I went in there with very low expectations. I went with Mike Race, and I said, like, it wasn't until, like, the trailer started that I really started to get excited, because the atmosphere, like, oh, it's here. But I didn't want to set myself up for disappointment. And with everything going on, from Henry Cavill's mustache, CGI, to Zack Snyder and that, the horrible death of his daughter, and Joss Whedon having to step into the mixed response of BBS, and
exactly right.
Lackluster track record thus far. I didn't want to, I didn't have much expectation. And that said, I feel like I'm pretty unbiased when I feel like I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed, some of the best Marvel movies. Now, would I say Guardians of the Galaxy is a better movie? I probably would. Yeah, if I'm being unbiased. Is this comparable? I think this is better than Avengers. I think it's comparable. I'm one of the rare that liked Age of Ultron better, but I'd say it's comparable to that, in my opinion. I don't know. I told Mike too, and I don't want to get on too much of a tangent, but it's kind of like, when the critics just really savagely review a slasher film, right? I know what I'm expecting when I go in there, right? Obviously I'm expecting a little bit more with DC, comic book movies, but it's kind of the same thing. Occasionally, DC will step up and really knock it out of the park with something that's unique and just an artistic representation of a storyline, with the Nolan movies, and debatably with Watchmen. I love that movie. Some people don't, but I think you could point that out to a lot of it. I think Marvel has less of those, and they stand by the tried and true formula of just predictable plot points.
So yes, I'm sorry. Finish your point, and then I want to.
The Disney CGI that yes, they do better, but that's really all there is to those movies.
I didn't really even think the CGI in this movie was terrible, but yeah,
there were moments, but it wasn't distracting for me.
No,
in my opinion,
not at all.
There are a couple of moments that we can get into more detail later, but
so I just really want to say quickly, when I was at community college, I took a couple film classes. One of my professors, when speaking about the horror genre, like you said, she's like, that genre is critic proof in the sense that horror fans will go see horror movies regardless of what the critics say. I feel that's kind of the same way with this film and DC comic fans. If you're a fan of DC Comics, you're going to like this movie probably. General audiences apparently are not responding to it well. It earned under $100 million in its opening weekend, which, $94 million sounds like a lot, but it's not for a movie which had reshoots.
In my opinion, is that word of mouth will keep it at least consistent, or it'll have a better second week. That's my opinion. We'll see if it's true or not. I think what hurt PBS was word of mouth. It had a high opening weekend, and then it dropped off to The Boss Lady or whatever movie.
Yeah, it had like a 66% drop off or something. It was crazy.
I do not think the case of this. I'd be very surprised if it did not stay number one spot, unless I'm missing something, that there's some big, flag tentpole movie coming out.
There's
next week.
The next one, really, like the big one, is Star Wars, and that's weeks away.
Right.
So I think you might be right. Wonder Woman didn't have huge drop-offs. That was consistently high. If positive word of mouth keeps this thing afloat, but
honestly, outside of the Rotten Tomatoes score and a handful of the Variety, I believe you were saying the Variety.
That one was particularly scathing.
Right. For the most part, just go on YouTube and look up Justice League review, just anything. I don't think YouTube is filtering my search results to only show positive reviews. I haven't really seen it from comic book fans that are coming in unbiased. Even looking at the IMDb, and this is true of not just DC, but there are so many, Rotten Tomatoes is ridiculously, glaringly, it's always 40 points below. He has a 7.5 out of 10, which I think is a very fair rating. That's probably what I would give it. Rotten Tomatoes has it at a 37. And it had it at 37 before it even opened in the States.
It's currently at 40, which is still, not very high.
No, I'm looking at, I have my computer screen right now. It's 37. That's what it says on the
I see 40. I'm at Rotten Tomatoes right now.
Oh my God, there's a conspiracy happening.
Reviews counted, it says Joe 250, Fresh 100, Rotten 150.
Okay, I had the open, the comparison between IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes and see if once I go on the... Oh, you're right. Yeah, and it's at 40% now. Yeah. So it's gradually raising. Once I don't know. But then audience scores. How does that make sense? Audience score says 85% like it, but it has a 40% tomato meter.
So how
does that make sense?
That's right. There's clearly a disparity between audience people. And to your point, Joe, real quick, from what I on the message boards, the DC Comics message boards, the people there praising the film, obviously pointing out the shortcomings which the movie had. But so if you're a fan of DC Comics, this movie, obviously you'll enjoy it. To that point, Joe, let's start with our spoiler-free review. You were mentioning, I think, earlier, if we do that, then go into maybe a breakdown of the characters, we can get into spoiler territory at that point.
Sounds good, Jimmy.
All right, perfect. I'll start it off by saying that going into this film, my expectations were, I think, a 2 out of 10. And throughout seeing the film, my enjoyment level just kept rising and rising and rising. Seeing the heroes that I've kind of always wanted to see on screen, like, sure, I love Captain America, I love Iron Man, but seeing not only the trifecta of Batman, Wonder Woman, Superman, who we've seen before, but all these other heroes on screen together just did it for me in some way that I wasn't expecting. And I think this isn't really a spoiler, but the depiction of Superman in this film, who is clearly a brighter version of the character, that really struck a chord for me and has a lot to do with my perception of this DCEU at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe we can get into that like a little bit more of Superman. I didn't have really. I agree with everything you're saying. Like, there's a couple of points I guess I'd make about a couple scenes. Namely, I know there would be the mustache talk a little bit, but
yeah, but like
we can get into that with
right. So the story, without spoiling anything, it's very simple, right? There's a new god from another world that they, I guess, don't really. Yeah.
Trailers. We don't need to reiterate that it's a very simple story. Batman gets the team together. That's it. Like, I mean,
right.
They definitely toned it down, and I know they're placating a lot of like the negative feedback from the first movie, or Batman vs Superman. Like, it's definitely lighter in tone, definitely a simpler plot. Like, they definitely made strides to make it more palatable to everyone.
For
I will say this, like, my initial reaction to this movie was it made sense.
It goes from A to B to C in that order.
Right. Like, you can look now at Man of Steel, Batman vs Superman, and this movie, and there's like a lineage. You just like, there's a character arc of all, like, even of Batman with the two movies that makes sense to me. Like, that the reason why Superman was a little bit more brooding, and then he's now just been raised from the dead and has a better appreciation of life. Batman 2, like, it made so much sense. And, you know, once again, with the spoiler review, we'll get into a little bit more of the exact moments to that. But I think it did a great job because it made Batman vs Superman stronger. And I think that was another comment I made while we were doing our Dark Knight commentary, was that what pisses me off so much about Dark Knight Rises is it mutes a lot of the things that the Dark Knight sets up. It makes it a lesser film by contrast, because it follows it and then it completely ignores certain things that it set up in the Dark Knight, in my opinion. In this movie, it doesn't ignore things, it builds on them, and it makes it seamless. Now, that said, there are clearly my takeaway that a lot of criticism I've had with this movie, there are clearly two different directors. I mean,
yes.
There are two different directors sometimes in one scene. I feel like almost like that Joss Whedon went in there and had a bunch of, like, Ben Affleck come in to just lay on the ground and say something funny after he got his ass kicked. And then did the same thing with Superman and Cyborg, just to throw in a joke. And the jokes land.
I think they all landed. And
right,
not to cut you off completely, but that tonal shift that you're talking about and that a lot of other people are talking about, maybe it's just because I was so captivated by finally seeing this and actually enjoying it. But I didn't really notice those shifts in tone. I have a lot to say about what Joss Whedon did. We'll get to that in the later on. But
tone overall or between directors?
I think, well, no. Okay. Between directors,
I'm asking
clearly.
You to elaborate without.
This movie had.
I don't understand.
So hold on. This movie had totally a different tone than Man of Steel or, BVS.
Right.
The people are saying, though, that they notice shifts in tone, from scene to scene. I didn't notice a ton of that. I mean, aside from, like, maybe the most obvious is the opening credits sequence. That sets this movie up to be completely depressing, and it ends up, not being that.
all that with the spoiler review again. But I just said both the same things. Like I saw both of those things. Overall, it was perfect. It added to Batman vs. Superman and Man of Steel and made both of those movies stronger. And it seemed like a natural transition, mood-wise and thematically, from Batman vs. Superman and even further from Man of Steel. However, it was not Zack Snyder's final vision, and there are definite, like, it's like, I bet you, may not be 100% accurate, but there are certain scenes that you can clearly tell that's not Zack Snyder directing. Like, and there are definitely scenes that's a Zack Snyder scene, definitely. And that's not, I'm not saying it's like necessarily a bad thing. Like, frankly, they were handed, like, I'm given a bad hand. I mean, with everything, with, Superman not being able to, Henry Cavill not being able to shave his mustache, to Zack Snyder's daughter committing suicide, and, him having to walk off the film understandably, and Joss Whedon taking over. I mean, it's amazing that this film came out as well as it did. And that's part of the reason why I wasn't looking forward to it as much as, the Suicide Squad and the letdown, after that as well. But it's not necessarily a bad thing. Like, I think they met those obstacles, and it may have made it a better film. I would like to see Zack Snyder's cut or whatever he had. I feel like it was almost complete. Like, it had to be almost complete, like maybe some final editing, which maybe he would do. I would hope they would give us an extended cut or a director's cut with the Blu-ray release, but
there's totally a cut like they're out there. There is scenes that surfaced on the internet. And Junkie XL did a score for the movie. Danny Elfman was brought in, after to replace that score. So I agree with you. I think that there was most of a film shot, right?
It was a little jarring, like especially the second viewing, like to hear like the '89 Batman march. But the first time I heard it, like that was one of those moments I practically jumped out of my seat. Like, oh my God, Batman is on screen and they have the '89 Batman march.
Because fuck it, you can't top that. And it's right. Danny Elfman anyways, so.
It just, like, there were a lot of, like, it's like clips of music, and it didn't seem to really blend well. And they had Wonder Woman, they tried to add the Donner Superman, and
they're
really, like, right, but they're all from different eras, so it doesn't really blend, like, they're not the same music, so it's a little jarring. Not necessarily in a bad way. It's definitely fan service, but I felt like the soundtrack, it was definitely not Danny Elfman's best. It was not, like, there were definitely, I feel like maybe a combination of Elfman and Junkie XL might have been the best we could have asked for, but
could be.
What we got.
It wasn't. I agree. It wasn't his best. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, overall, like I said, I'd probably give it a score like around 7.5 out of 10. If I'm going to give 10, or out of 5, like a 4.5. I don't know what somewhere around there.
4.5 would be a 9 out of 10.
Yeah, I know. I guess 4 maybe. I don't know.
I would give it a 4 too. I mean, I guess I didn't really make all the. It's hard for me to try and make points without getting into spoiler territory. But again, right. I guess just to sum up my reaction, I think if you go into it for a fun time and a fun movie, you're going to get that. And then if you're a DC Comics fan on top of that, you are really going to appreciate a lot about this film.
And we need to start boycotting. Like, I don't know. It's not just DC. Like, Rotten Tomatoes is just, I think it's just a bunch of angry people. Just they don't review movies they like on Rotten Tomatoes. They review movies they hate or anticipate hating or just want to hate. It doesn't matter what it is. Like, it's not, I mean, I guess, like, they're a little bit nicer to Marvel, in my opinion. I don't know. And that's someone's opinion, and maybe it's validated. But it's definitely not a core sample, right? It's definitely disparaging. And especially if you can look at any other site, and it's just, they're so conflicting. Like, I really don't look at a Rotten Tomatoes score for anything. Like,
well,
nothing.
Rotten Tomatoes, it doesn't, it's not like writers writing for it. It aggregates.
Right.
Right. So,
yeah.
But the thing with that is that, so let's say a critic gives, a Marvel movie like a 2.5 out of 4, like 2.5 stars out of 4. Certain times that will be ranked as fresh, and then certain times it won't be. So I think there's definitely some crazy stuff going on. I don't want to get into too many conspiracy theories. I was talking to a friend about this, that potentially certain people might be getting paid by other studios or something. But it's definitely skewed. It for sure is.
Right. And like how they want us to believe the Earth is a globe, and it's like clearly flat.
It's clearly flat, and like how people think we went to the moon.
I'm totally agreeing with you, Jimmy, about these global conspiracies. Yeah, you heard it from the horse's mouth here.
You heard it from the expert here.
Flat Earther, Marvel, and Rotten Tomatoes. All coalesced
God,
into
I
one.
actually have 2 friends who are flat earthers, and it drives me so fucking nuts.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
Why
yes.
are you friends?
I don't know. I mean, they're not like close friends. They're like kind of like associates, but it's just, oh my goodness. All right. So you want to do
time.
spoilers? Yes, please. You want to do?
Well, let me give the equivalent of all caps on the internet. Spoilers. How was that? How'd that translate?
It sounded like you're saying spoilers.
Okay, that sounded erratic. All right.
You want to do character
Superman.
breakdowns?
What? My character?
Character breakdowns? You were saying Superman.
Yeah, Superman. Superman's the first one on there. I wanted to say you because you mentioned this earlier, right?
Yes.
I love the opening.
Clearly,
I don't think clearly he had a mustache when he filmed it.
That's
but
fine.
I think that's only I think that's only noticeable like in hindsight. I guess he's definitely had a fatter upper lip for some reason. But really, had I not known about him doing reshoots with a mustache, I would have just chalked that up to poor image quality because it's taken with a cell phone camera, and they went to lengths in an effort to hide the CGI to make it poor video quality. But once again, like if I hadn't known about the mustache, I probably would have just chalked it up to that, not noticed any of the other things. I will say this: what kind of irked me about that scene is you don't really get an answer, right? Like I totally expected them to bookend the movie with that scene, and then you get the answer at the end of the movie. And
I
it's
was
something
hoping
like
to get
friends or something like that, or some kind of Boy Scoutish thing. They never give the answer. He says, "What do you like about Earth?" He stares off. Does a Superman stare up, chin up? And he goes to answer, and then it cuts right into the somberness, which I loved. But I thought that would be a great way to bring it back home at the end. It seemed like a missed opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, they who knows what he was going to say, right? The people,
The writer should know that.
And I think that's definitely one of the scenes that was directed, obviously, because it's So anything with Superman's mustache erased is clearly a Joss Whedon scene, right? Because he did the reshoots. I think almost every single Superman scene in this movie had an erased mustache. So I think Joss Whedon directed almost every moment of Superman that you see on the screen in this film.
Yeah. I mean, we can go farther. I mean, but he, from even like his, so obviously they all teamed together, used the mother box to resurrect Superman, which, I mean, it could have been done in different ways. I was not
expecting that at all.
So I started getting the idea when Cyborg, there was some conversation about how it regenerates, like, it's something about bodies. There was a line, like a throwaway line, but it wasn't. It was kind of foreshadowing. Cyborg says something about it. I'm like, oh, this is how they're going to bring Superman back. But up until that point, like before, if you were to ask me, like on Wednesday, how they're going to do it, I'd be like, I don't know. You saw that, like, it's just solar radiation that all of a sudden he just pops right out. But I get why they did it that way is because the team had to go together. You had to have that internal conflict, and it just helped create more scenes with the Justice League, and not everyone agreeing. And Batman's obviously always right, but not at the time.
I really
right, but just
really appreciated the fact that the other members were very trepidatious. I mean, especially Wonder Woman. going into that.
We'll get into that a little bit more. But I am sure so that whole scene was, I believe, like a reshoot, like kind of.
Yeah.
Like, I know there's something at the memorial, but I think the way he was resurrected was done differently in Zack Snyder's vision. That's what I'm guessing, based on the reshoot and what you can tell is reshot or not.
Yeah, I don't know, but for me, that is probably my favorite scene in the entire film.
Yeah, so this kind of crosses over to The Flash, but I know you know what I'm talking about, and you could see it coming a mile away.
It blew my mind, and I was Go ahead.
Obviously, he's resurrected from the dead. He kind of like has the Lazarus Pit effect on him. He's angry, doesn't really know who he is, and the Justice League ends up like kind of fighting him and kind of trying to take him out, but obviously not doing a very good job. They're all of them are struggling. And the Flash goes to run up, and everything slows down.
Which,
and you see, like,
previously in the film,
like,
at this point, you've seen him do it effortlessly. You know, like getting the sword. So keep going.
Thank you for allowing me to. So everyone's standing like a statue, and then you see Superman's eye move, and then his head turns. So he's obviously turning his head as fast as the Flash, and just Ezra Miller's reaction to it, like the audience both times, like just gut laughs all around, and it was just one of those, like yes moments, one of these great, I don't know, goosebump moments of the film.
I don't like making comparisons too much, but I'm going to make one. So I really like Quicksilver's portrayal in the new X-Men films, and his Speed Force things are done so well. And I'm thinking, how are they going to top that? Because they're going to do something like it with the Flash.
Let's stay on topic with the Superman first before we go into the Flash, please. Huh? Because otherwise we're going to keep talking about the Flash.
Sorry, I thought we were transitioning to Flash. Okay, so I'll bring that up later. I guess the final piece.
Are we still recording, by the way? It seems like it's been more than 15 minutes.
It has been, and I just have to click a button that says, "Are you still there?" So we're fine.
Oh.
Yeah, don't worry, it's fine. His complete, and you mentioned this with his resurrection, new outlook on life makes so much sense to me. I know it's corny, but when he said, "I love truth and I'm a big fan of justice," I just went apeshit over that. Yeah. And something visual is that clearly his costume is brighter. And I think that makes a world of fucking difference.
No, I loved the interaction between him and Batman. I mean, this may be more of a Batman thing, but one of the lines that really got me, was Batman said he's more human than me. Like, that's why he needs to be the leader. Cause it really makes it, like, when he's talking about, he's like, he's loved, he's had jobs, he's done all these things that I've never done. I've just been a, like, mopey little bitch in a cave my entire life. Like, Superman has actually lived a life. Like, that's why he's, like, Earth's salvation, even though he's an alien. I think that summarized the difference between Superman and Batman. Superman is an alien, but he's more human than Batman. And I think that was a great line that they threw in there that,
You're giving me a boner just talking about it, Joe.
Yeah, like, epitomizes Superman and Batman and that relationship.
And I think that was done in that one line in many ways almost better than anything in BVS to show their dynamic. You know what I mean?
I think it was kind of like the same line, like that Martha line that they failed on a little bit, which I got. I didn't have a problem with it. We talked about it before. I was more like, holy shit, I've been fans of both these characters this entire time. I've never really realized both their names are Martha. Like, that's what I took away from it. But, like, everyone else it's like, I get it. It kind of clunked a little bit. It could have been refined a little bit better, but I got the gist of why. Like, this, like, seemed like that same type of line, but refined better, and it really was like a home run with that, just that little bit. It explained so much about their dynamic, and I loved it. And I kind of, like, as not the biggest Superman fan, I do appreciate Superman. I do see, like, okay, the difference. And once again, it did not seem like a course correction. It seemed a natural progression from the previous two movies, that this is how he would be,
I think.
Whereas maybe in the comic books it'd be the reverse. He'd be the Boy Scout, and then after the death of Superman, he was wearing black and had a mullet. But hey, whatever. I get it. I think it worked seamlessly.
Totally. I think, to your point, it may be a little bit of a course correction, but they do it in a way that makes sense.
Right.
And it is a progression too.
I'm not arguing that that's not the reason for doing it. I'm saying that they did it in such a way that it seems natural.
Totally.
That's yeah. Like you said, his costume. Mike kept saying that he saw like the background of his S was white in certain scenes, and then it went to yellow. I didn't really catch that.
I didn't notice that.
I didn't notice that.
Love
Henry Cavill just looks amazing. Like I'm sorry, like I didn't really grow up with the Christopher Reeve Superman. Like it's a little bit before my time. I didn't see it till I was much older. He was never really my Superman. So I know I'm going to piss off a ton of people, but I love Henry Cavill like Superman. I think he could do great things. I think he's just begun being Superman.
When he ripped open his shirt to reveal the S, that is finally, I'm sold on Superman in this movie. I looked over Mike, I'm like, it only took 3 movies to get that one fucking shot. I mean, come on. Did Mike flip out at that part?
No, he was. I was excited just to finally see that.
Me too, man.
I was expecting him to run him into a phone booth. Man, yeah. I don't know. There were so many of those just great.
Can we talk about, since we're on Superman? I mean, maybe it's another way to, if we want to do Flash next, segue into him. The mid-credits sequence is something that
before that, even like his. He just has that hero moment where, like, the Justice League is trying to take down Steppenwolf, and then, Superman comes and saves the day, and he
totally does, right? Like,
there's that. That was another, like, rewrite, I'm sure, like, but I got a laugh out it. He's talking to Batman. He's like, well, I know you didn't bring me back because you like me, and Batman goes, I don't not like you. I liked it. But he obviously, and then he stops. Like, Batman's telling him his plan. He's like, nope, there are people around. I got to save them first. Whereas Batman probably like, I'm going to save some people, but I don't know. Like, Batman, Batman obviously couldn't have done anything but the building of people. But that was a very Superman moment. I think that deserves bringing up. And so there was also a cutscene too that makes more sense now. Like when he and Lois are talking in the field after he's been raised from the dead. I feel like that should have been a little bit longer. And what we saw in the credits, I think that would have been a lot more heartwarming because he sees she's wearing the wedding ring and he says, well, I guess I know your answer, which it didn't hit in the trailer. But if you would put that in the movie, like I think that's, maybe not a tear-jerking moment, but it's definitely a heartwarming moment that I don't think would have really broken the pace too much. The movie kind of slowed down before the third act. I was definitely missing from the movie.
Yeah, I really appreciate the Amy Adams Lois, I think. I guess we could talk about supporting characters a little bit when we're on the main ones. She wouldn't be my first pick, and she wasn't with Man of Steel. What's that?
First pick for Vicky Vale.
Yeah.
She's like Vicky Vale, except she's playing Superman for now.
But she, sure. She's doing a really good job, and I really enjoyed her Lois in this movie. I really believed her longing for Clark, for Superman. The scenes with Martha, I appreciated those.
Just before you get on Martha there, though, I do miss, and that was one of my problems with Man of Steel, is that they never gave us the relationship that you got in the Richard Donner Superman, where the buffoonish Clark and then Superman. And I guess maybe you can't do it because that's always also one of the silly things about Superman, is that she doesn't recognize that they're the same person. So I guess maybe in a combined universe you can't have that type of character next to Batman. So I understand why they did it, but part of me would have liked them to extend their relationship a little, to see more of, like, to have a Man of Steel 2 before we had Batman v Superman. Because now I'm looking at it like, it seems like Batman v Superman was more of a Batman movie. Like, we had a Superman movie, we had a Batman movie, we had a Wonder Woman movie, and then we get Justice League.
Yeah.
That's what it seems like to me.
Superman's clearly the supporting character in BVS, and he's definitely a supporting character in this movie. He steals the show more in Justice League than he did in BVS, and I totally agree with you that we probably should have gotten a Man of Steel 2, but that movie may have been shit. And now with this Superman, I am way more excited to see a standalone Superman movie. Yeah,
I agree, yeah. But yeah, you were talking about Martha Kent. I mean, there's a little mini subplot about her losing the home. And, you know, I mean, she definitely has that strong Midwest woman type thing. She doesn't let people know that when she's down, or, you know, tries to hide her emotions type thing. Because,
yeah.
I really like
those subplots. Totally. Those subplots aren't, you know, like totally amazing. And, you know, come to think of it, this movie really didn't have any subplots except for, I guess, that, and then maybe some of the Gotham, like the Lois Lane too. I mean, really, the point of it is kind of like that It's a Wonderful Life type thing, where he died. How does that impact the rest of the world? That's really, you say he's a secondary character. Like, even though he doesn't, he's more of like the, I guess you call it, I forget the expression, the Henry VIII type character, like someone that doesn't show up to the third act, where he shows up a little earlier than that. He is the main focus of the entire movie. His absence is the main focus. It's the entire movie is about what the world has become since Superman has died, and how that's impacted everyone, from Wonder Woman to Batman to the criminal to his mother and his you know, fiancé, and that's the entire movie. So I think Superman is the main character of this movie, even if he's not in it, even if it's a third man type story structure, where the third man, everyone's talking about Orson Welles the entire movie, and it builds him up so much, as Orson Welles would say, like, by the time he shows up, he can phone it in, and people are still going to, like, say he deserves an Oscar for it, because everyone else did the acting for him. It's that type of, once again, I forget the term, I believe it's called a Henry VIII act, or a Henry VIII type character, because they don't appear till the third act. And everyone is talking about that character for the first two acts. So, Sure. So maybe kind of, and I agree with everything that you just brought up. I guess maybe what I meant was that his role was limited, you know, I mean, and not his story. Clearly his story is the focus, and maybe the absence of his role. But Henry Cavill had the, you know, least amount of screen time, is my point, amongst all these characters.
But he hit home the most because
all the other characters, Joe.
Yeah, all the other characters are talking about him the entire time, and that's what it was about. It was about, in a way, like, that's how they are rebooting their franchise, by killing a character and bringing him back. And yes, no, like some people griped about, well, it was never believable that he died. I'm like, well, it was never believable that Agent Smith character died in Avengers, and it's never believable that any of these characters died. Like, that, it's comic books. Of course it's not believable. Like, yes, Superman's coming back, but it's
like, were you around in the early 90s, man?
Yeah. Like, they handled it in a beautiful way. Like, they showed what the world was like. Just like, you know, I do appreciate Batman v Superman, despite all its flaws, you know, showing the world, you know, with Superman there. And I, once again, that's the best thing I can say about this movie. It makes Batman v Superman a stronger film. Like, it's the darkness, like, you know, and the light, and, you know, the light world, and everyone's, you know, happy-go-lucky. Superman dies.
To that point, Joe, like, I saw BVS once in the theater with you, and then I saw the ultimate cut, and I felt like I got all I needed to get out of that movie. After seeing Justice League, I am kind of excited to go back and rewatch Man of Steel and BVS again. So
you only watched the ultimate cut once?
I did.
Really? I don't know. I've watched it numerous times.
I know. You tell me you throw it on in the background and stuff when you're doing things. I don't do that.
because despite all its flaws, it still has some great scenes. Like even just like the Batman scenes are phenomenal. Like the best thing we've seen in live action, in my opinion. Like that fight sequence. Well, maybe we want to talk about Batman, or you got anything else? Oh, you wanted to talk about the post-credits.
I wanted to talk about the mid-credits, sequence, which is the race between Flash and Superman, which has been done numerous times, but was first done in the late Silver Age. And it's you couldn't... I'm thinking to myself, are they going to be able to do this? And this was the perfect way to do it. Just having the two of them do it. It's not even a plot point. It's just a fun little thing at the very end. There's obviously
the race between the Flash and Superman.
The race between Flash and Superman. There's no one there with a gun. What did he do? He lit a firecracker, right? That was there.
His fingers, yeah.
Yeah.
And obviously, maybe Flash at that early stage can't beat Superman, but Flash, once he harnesses his powers, is gonna fucking outrun Superman like nothing. Like he'll run loops around him before Superman, or he'll travel back in time to let him know that he already won the race. I don't know, and we might as well get into the other, because it's kind of once again supporting characters for Superman and Batman, I guess, which we should talk about after that.
Luthor and Deathstroke.
Yeah, so, and the League of Their Own, no crying in baseball. But,
I love that movie.
What is it? League of... I'm trying to blank on the name of the league. The
Legion of Doom?
Legion of Doom, yes, there we go.
Or the Injustice League, as some people are saying, but no, it's the Legion of Doom, man.
Well, he says a League of Our Own. So I would more like the Injustice League is what I was thinking too. Sure.
All right. Whatever.
But it says a league.
The name doesn't matter. What matters is the fact that. Thing. Sure. What matters is the fact that that's a total fanboy fucking awesome moment where you have Luthor acting like Luthor. Like I didn't like Jesse Eisenberg, right? I didn't mind this scene at all. And seeing,
and he's wearing the suit from the Donner Superman.
Man, on the yacht, and Slade Wilson
as Slade Wilson, Deathstroke looks like he just walked out of the Arkham game. He looks fantastic.
It's a shame we don't see him do anything really except for exposition, but just seeing him in that scene, fucking, I was pumped as fuck after that.
And Luthor stole his jail escape from Killing the Joker, so he must have talked to the Joker.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they had that moment where the cop instead of Batman goes into the jail cell and turns Luthor, what you think is Luthor, around, and some guy like giggling hysterically, obviously in disguise as Lex Luthor, a la the Killing Joke. So I think that was another little fan service there. I think it was so intentionally like the Killing Joke. It's had to have been, I don't know.
But what it made me happy that Luthor was actually in the movie, because I didn't think we were going to see him. And Daniel made this point that before we saw the movie, he's like, where the fuck is Brainiac, right? And then he's also saying, you always need Luthor there. Like, Luthor is a supporting character to Superman, so I hope that whatever they're setting up gets made at this point.
I hope that Jesse Eisenberg has picked up a couple comic books by now and realizes that he wasn't playing the Riddler, he was playing Lex Luthor, and does some course correction on his own. It sure seems that way, but we only got a couple seconds of him, so I was definitely far more impressed. However, I don't understand why they shaved his head for prison. I mean, I guess maybe it's like a Guantanamo Bay type thing where they were shaving his head. B, why he kept it now? Did you just like the look of a bald head? It's not. It just would have made more sense if they just showed a little, his hair falling out after being in the little cryogenic pool in the Kryptonian ship, or whatever you want to call it, the little fluid. If that radiation made his hair fall out, rather than shaving his head. That was one of the dumbest moment from that movie, and no one picked on that. It was all
he should have just been fucking bald from the beginning, right? But obviously the reason he's still bald is because Lex Luthor is fucking bald.
Right. I mean, I get why they didn't, but yeah, I just think, I was expecting his hair to fall out and, have, like, that was his kind of, like, comeuppance, but instead he gets his head shaved. It doesn't make any sense. I don't know. Yeah. And frankly, I've tried to shave my head, and there's always going to be some stubble. Like, they did some close-up on his head, and it looks bald. It's not like a shaved head. It looks bald. So I don't know what razor he's using to shave his head that close. Like, I mean, it's always like, anyway. Let's talk about Batman?
All right. So you want to talk about some Batman?
Yeah, sure, I do. So we had that opening scene, first glimpse we get of Batman. Some nice rooftop fighting. You got that little, I guess, a cat burglar, I guess you would call him, which he's a pretty renowned character actor. I can't remember where I've seen him before, but he's in a lot of TV shows and movies.
I think that was great way to show that fear attracts the parademons.
Oh yeah, but so I was a little confused by it. Like, and I don't know if it's part of the reshoots either. So he's breaking into a building. He's got his satchel of, like, either stolen loot or burglary tools. He looks over, and Batman's, like, an epic shot of Batman just, like, standing on a rooftop or gargoyle or something like that, just looking at him.
Yes.
And he instantly drops his duffel bag, kind of giving the impression that it's like, all right, fuck it, I'm out of here. But then does a 180 and starts firing at Batman. And you have some straight out of the comic book action. Batman jumps over, like, one of those water towers. The guy keeps shooting. He puts a bullet through the water tower. Water sprays him in the face. He loses Batman. Batman does some amazing flips. And once again, say what you want about Zack Snyder, he knows how to at least direct action. I think everyone can agree on that, maybe, unless I've heard people even complain about the slow motion stuff, but it really makes it look like a comic book, in my opinion. I mean, this is very comic book type action. I always feel like I'm watching a living comic book with a Zack Snyder film, and maybe that's a bad thing for some people, I guess. I don't know. I don't see it as such. But you have that. He does a flip around and does some magic with his grappling gun and hangs him over the rooftop. I was half expecting him to say, "What do you want from me?" Like, "I want you to tell all your friends about me." But instead he says, "I want fear." And then we find out he's been hunting these parademons, and he's discovered that fear tracks them. He ensnares the parademon, and then the parademon has some kind of suicide pill that makes it explode, which I did find a little bit. So the explosion creates like a blood swath of 3 boxes.
Yeah, I mean, they're the mother boxes, clearly.
Right, but I mean, it's not like the whole point of killing yourself is to not give information to the enemy. It'd be kind of like if you took a cyanide capsule and the code appeared on your forehead. I mean, why would that do anything? And why did they place bombs in the shape of, like, the mother boxes strategically in the guy's chest so that whenever he killed himself, it would create a pattern as long as he was stapled or tied to a chimney? It was really dumb. That was the first moment in there. I'm like, why? That doesn't make... I mean, just stop. Just cut that line out. It's so stupid. And then, after all that, then the burglars talking to Batman like they're buddies, or if it was like an entrapment thing.
And then Batman just takes off.
Right, without even tying him up or anything. So I'm like, did they just stage all this? And if they staged all this, then how did he get fear out of him? I mean, I guess I would still be afraid of that whole scenario, even if I was working with Batman and maybe didn't tell me but it doesn't answer these questions.
I'm going to show up and do something real spooky, okay?
Like, I guess I'll take it for what it is, and there's a couple lines that didn't land right and maybe made the scene more confusing than it should have been. But overall, I thought the scene was a great introduction to Batman. We also have a lot of, in my opinion, just overall, Ben Affleck just did a much better job portraying Bruce Wayne and Batman in this movie than he did in BVS and in that god-awful post-credit scene in Suicide Squad. I think especially in that latter, he was phoning it in. There are some times when, even in the trailer, they cut out that scene where Wonder Woman and Bruce Wayne are talking about Aquaman and recruiting the recruits. He says something like, he's on the fence, and Wonder Woman said, he said no, and he goes, he said no. It's just his delivery that it's obvious, it's just acting, kind of thing, rather than, he's like what Kevin Smith always says, he's asking for Affleck, and you're giving me Matt Damon, kind of like Ben Affleck can act when he's directed well, and I think there were moments that Zack Snyder really didn't. If there's one, Zack Snyder definitely relies on the actor to bring it themselves. I feel you can't really bring it out of the actor if they don't have it. And in my opinion, there are a lot of I think he did a much better job of being likable as Bruce Wayne and fearsome as Batman.
I agree totally. It was almost a complete character shift, which, again, is explained by the fact that he's missing Superman and realizing, that he needs to maybe change his outlook on the world and on life. So it does make sense. Be that as it may, he's still using a lot of guns and drinking. He pours the glasses for him and Wonder Woman.
That was like 4 fingers of whiskey.
That was a big glass of whiskey.
I was half expecting Wonder Woman to look at that like, oh my God, jeez, like who pours this much whiskey in a glass? Like, look at that thing. It's like practically overflowing. It's like if I handed my kid a wine glass and a wine bottle and I asked them to fill it up, it's like how they would fill up wine in a wine glass, like overflowing. Which I don't know. I think if they made a moment, Daddy. Yeah, I think if they made it a moment, it would have been. It could have been a funny moment, but they didn't. It just kind of like Ben Affleck poured a
right. It's just like, well, Ben Affleck said that he needs to have a whiskey on the set every day, so here it is.
So
it didn't bother me too much, but yes, it was.
I mean, I can get behind an older, grizzled Batman that's drinking more so than I can get behind one using guns, but at least he kind of kept it to, parademons and the Batmobile in this one, so, I can look past that too. I think, there were definitely, that's one of those things I felt like there were shots done of injured Justice League members, saying funny things, and they did land, but it was definitely, most of the team had moments like that, when Superman floors Batman. There was a very funny moment. He's like, "Oh, something's definitely bleeding."
Right. And that was clearly a Joss Whedon, I think, direction. And I enjoyed it. But
great.
You don't get any moments like that. The closest thing we got in BVS was when Batman says to Martha, "I'm a friend of your son's." Like that. That to me was funny.
Horrible.
I mean, right. I don't think totally off for Batman, the lighter tone for him, but much appreciated by me for sure.
Even like just the little nods, like between Alfred and him, like one misses the days when our biggest threat was exploding wind-up penguins. We've seen it a million times in the trailer, but. There's definitely, and Alfred always trying to hook Batman up with a date, like, look, Miss Prince, it seems like you have a date. About time someone around here had one, that type of thing, I don't know. It seems like that Alfred's always trying to get Bruce hitched or something.
Totally. And even, I guess maybe even just to speak to Jeremy Irons for a minute, his Alfred, I wasn't like, I didn't hate his Alfred in BVS. I didn't love him. I think he may have been, for better or worse, one of the best parts of BVS, but he really, I think, shined in this film and truly did the man in the van character.
He got rid of his suspenders over the vest. It drove me nuts. Like, who wears suspenders over a vest? Like, what kind of steampunk Alfred are we getting here? Like, it doesn't even make sense. And, I still want a bald, mustachioed Alfred. I don't think I'm going to get one anytime soon, but hey, Jeremy Irons, still a great, Alfred. I can't say enough about, finally a comic book, accurate Batman costume, even with the armor plating, and, definitely seems functional. We got that little, map, that kind of, gauntlet map that he has in the Arkham games.
Yeah, I noticed that right away. Yeah. Maybe that was one of the few gadgets, I guess. We get a Batarang.
Grappling gun. Yeah.
The grappling gun. I really like the, what was it called? The crawler or whatever that.
Yeah, Nightcrawler.
Yes. I think that was well done. So, Batman was...
Elfman, Batman March.
Danny Elfman, Batman March. Batman, clearly trying to be the brains of the team. Batman was Batman. Batman was Justice League Batman in this movie.
And it seemed to make sense. Normally, Superman's the one recruiting people for the Justice League. It made sense that Batman needed to get whatever, this motley crew together, because he, was a part of killing off, Earth's best hope, which is something I kind of missed from the trailer. I guess, I don't know. I can get into that when we talk about Steppenwolf, but, I can't say enough about Ben Affleck really knocked it out of the park in this movie.
And I think all the characters, like you were saying earlier, it's a character film. I think all the actors did a great job with their characters. Characters were definitely the strongest point of this film.
I was to say this. I was kind of upset, not disappointed that we didn't get the blue and gray costume that they were showing. Like, I know it was a colorized poster that they used, but I was a little upset because everyone else had more or less the colors they show in the movie, and they definitely color corrected Batman's more than everyone else and made him blue cowled. And I thought there might be a moment when he puts on the armor where he has the classic blue and gray, and I thought it would have worked well if in anything a Justice League movie, but they didn't give it to us. It's a minor quibble. I think this would have been the time to see that. Still, his costume looked great. Pretty much all I don't know anything else to add about Batman. Gordon.
Getting into the GCPD people, Gordon in particular, as soon as I saw J.K. Simmons on screen, I'm like, this fucking screams Gordon. And I know you like the stockier Gordon, but he looks and acts like fucking Gordon. And
sure, I think he must have had like a 2-day shoot in front of a CGI. So I think a lot of his lines were more cartoonish than they should have been, especially when it just seemed forced, and we've seen in the trailers when he does the turn and there's the reveal that they've all disappeared, and you have that moment with him in the Flash. It seems like he's definitely expecting them to be gone, and it didn't seem natural that he turned at that moment or how he turned. Once again, it's a minor quibble, and probably when he has more room to grow with the character, I think he'll fit nicely in those shoes, but I'm sure he was on set for, at most, for those scenes, 2 days, maybe a week, maybe. He has 2 very brief scenes in that movie, and they're both on the set, more or less,
Well, he has, I think it's 3. He has the rooftop scene. He has the scene in the GCPD with Crispus Allen, who that was.
Right. Okay. Yes. Yeah. You're right. Yeah. And then another room.
And then like the aftermath kind of scene.
Yeah. But that was probably taken the same, and they used the shot. Those shots on the rooftop are just like straight out of the comic book.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What do we want to do next? I want to talk about Wonder Woman.
Sure. It's more of probably. I don't want to say the strongest, but she is strong. She's a strong Wonder Woman, and she was one of the best parts about BVS. She's probably the most well received to this point is I guess what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Her standalone film. obviously did the best, and Gal Gadot, her introduction, I think was my favorite introduction sequence. I liked it more than the Batman introduction sequence.
I liked them all together. We had a Superman introduction, even though he's dead, and that's how they did it, like a brief little talking camera. Then you went to Batman, and they did Batman style. Then you had Wonder Woman with the terrorism in the bank, I guess, or it was the city hall, or in London, or something.
Yeah, I think it was a court, wasn't it?
Court in London. Yeah. But yeah. And her standing on the Lady Justice or whatever in London. No, she's based on a Greek goddess, but
totally out of the comics too.
She's gorgeous in that costume. And I also think more than that, like even outside of the movie, her response to I forget the guy's name with all the sexual harassment and allegations brought against him. It was after Harvey Weinstein. I forget his name. Ratner or something? Brett Ratner?
Brett Ratner? Well, no. Was Brett Ratner brought up? Are you talking about the director of God damn it, Usual Suspects in the first two X-Men? Bryan Singer?
Yes. No, not Bryan Singer. There's another one. But he was a producer on the first Wonder Woman. She insisted that he was taken off of any future projects that she'd be a part of with Wonder Woman, and I think that's very much. I like to see when, especially I guess Christopher Reeve or George Reeves, like really try and embody. I mean, it was a little easier, I guess, with the George Reeves era to get away with some shit, but still be a good role model for kids. But I think Wonder Woman is really, or Gal Gadot is really embracing that Wonder Woman type, truth, justice, and women's rights and all that type of thing, and just equality. And I think she's doing a great job in real life as well as in the movies. So it really adds to that. I think it helps that dimension. When you can buy someone
embodying the character off the screen.
Right, like if like I know there were a couple allegations against Ben Affleck, nothing horrible, like everyone's being. I'm trying to think of an example, but if someone's a complete shitheel, and then now they're playing, Superman, like you couldn't take, if Mel Gibson was Superman.
I was about to bring up him. Although he's coming back, so Hollywood's forgiven him.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, who hasn't been drunk and said some bad things?
I'm gonna get into, I guess, a little bit. It's kind of Wonder Woman adjacent. So the the Themyscira sequence where they're trying to get that box going, and there's that one shot where they lasso around the box and then shoot an arrow. I'm like, wow, like that was fucking terrific action.
It's like the 100 with just women instead of all the half-naked men. Like, it was so bad. Like, just all these badass women just really taking on this, alien god type. And
Steppenwolf.
In the end, they weren't able to keep the mother box, but they still put up a valiant effort and just really, I don't know, I'm just great. And, she's showing women representation in comics. Marvel's been trying by turning Thor into a woman and everything, but I think if really when you think about the best females in comics, if you were going to do a top 10 list, I would say 7 of them would be DC characters, in my opinion.
And probably Wonder Woman at number 1.
Poison Ivy, Wonder Woman,
Supergirl.
Yeah. Going on and on. I mean,
totally.
I know they have Captain Marvel, but
well, they have Captain Marvel, they have She-Hulk, they have Storm.
None of them can throw a cat at Wonder Woman, or even Catwoman, I would say.
My favorite geek out moment came where there's the flashback, and it's the Amazonians, the Atlanteans. You see Zeus there, and then when I saw that fucking Green Lantern I lost it. I was not expecting that, and seeing it and him dying and the ring flying off. It just, I pray to God that they get the Green Lantern Corps right. And I was
watching something, and he's actually, I'm not as knowledgeable as the Green Lantern Corps, but he's actually, the character they used was based off of in the comic books, the original, like the oldest known Green Lantern from the Earth realm, and he's like looks like this red crocodile man, and that's who they used, even though this takes place technically 2,000 years before that lantern was in the Earth zone.
Yeah, it's Sector 2814.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Really just nerding up this. Yes, a little bit too much for my liking.
Hey man, Green Lantern's a very close second to Batman for me in DC Comics fandom. So, I guess that's does that wrap it up for Wonder Woman? I mean, you know.
I would say there was that moment. I think they got a lot of cheers in my theaters when she just totally cold-cocked Bruce Wayne for speaking ill about Steve Trevor.
Totally.
Trevor. Loved it, but I also feel like, I don't know, I know the dynamics between her and Steve Trevor, but I also don't feel like that loss would still be so poignant 100 years later in this world. They introduced Steve Trevor, and he was gone within maybe a week in that timeline. And she felt so hard for him that she fell off the face of the earth and stayed on Themyscira and is still head over heels in love with this guy she met a week back. I mean, I don't know. I didn't buy that.
Well, she introduced him to the outside world, so I could definitely see. You remember some of your high school crushes, I'm sure.
The outside world that she stayed away from for 100 years. And I may remember crushes, but it wouldn't be like, oh, don't talk ill about that girl I liked 100 years ago, or I'm going to punch you. I mean, that I had a tryst with for a week that we didn't even have sex. I mean,
it's the only man she loved. It was the first man she met. I can kind of buy it.
I can buy it from the relationship that I know from the comic book. I don't buy it from the relationship they've set up in the DCEU. That's all I'm saying. They've known. Did they even kiss in that movie? I don't remember that. Maybe they did. I mean, come on. It's kind of like Alfred telling Bruce to marry Kim Basinger in the '89 movie after one date.
You like that Vicky Vale, huh? Well, yeah. Are you marrying her?
Or otherwise, I might. Why don't you marry her, Alfred? Okay. I mean, one date, Alfred. Calm down. Same thing with Gal Gadot. I just don't buy it. I don't know. I didn't see Wonder Woman as this great masterpiece that everyone else sees it as. I enjoyed the movie, and I love Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman, but a period piece, if I was going to pick a period piece comic book movie, I mean, of recent years, I'm going to pick First Avenger over Wonder Woman, in my opinion.
Yeah, we both discussed that Wonder Woman was, a slight knockoff of that movie and hit all the same notes. So
yeah, very much knockoff, just with a less cooler villain. And Wonder Woman really has no ties to World War I in the comics that I'm aware of.
She debuted during World War II, right? She debuted in 1940, 41?
Yeah, comic books didn't exist in 1914 to 1918, so no one debuted in World War I.
No, that's true.
So, yeah, it is true. Why would I say something that wasn't true, Jimmy?
I don't know.
Hey, I'm not shitting on Wonder. I frankly, though, if I want my Wonder Woman fix, I think I like the scenes from Batman vs Superman better than Wonder Woman. I'm very happy that she finally got her own solo film, and I'd be still rushing to the theater for the sequel. I'm not saying anything like that, but I think it wasn't as great as a lot of people make it out to be. That's all I'm saying. But She's great in this. She's great in everything. I really
She's
hope
clearly a great Wonder Woman. And
yeah,
I'm
great Wonder
also
Woman.
looking
It seems
forward
like
to
a
more of
great woman, great person in real life. So, yeah, I was hesitant when she was first, announced as cast as Wonder Woman, but I think she's really embodied that role. Other than that, I mean, there was a scene where Aquaman is sitting on her lasso of truth. Definitely seemed like a reshoot, but it was
and it was very enjoyable too. Though I brought some levity that is I don't know if much needed, but the levity really helps. Especially when it's a fucking comic book movie, right? So, not every character should be a comedian, which is kind of Joss Whedon's downfall, is that every character is a comedian. But the notes still, like the joke still landed, like you said. And the lasso one was probably the biggest one, I think.
And really the humor arrived from Aquaman, and that's where the jokes seem organic, and we can get into Aquaman now, I think, but Aquaman was one of the more comedic roles. I mean, some people may have had some. The jokes that landed from other characters were more of just tomfoolery or just being a team, that kind of thing. And that's where I think that like kind of brotherly bond. Wonder Woman even had a line that says, "I work with children." I mean, I've probably heard that line at least half a dozen times in other movies. It worked well enough that you got a chuckle. It was fine, and
And Ezra Miller as Flash was also probably the second funniest.
Right. Well, we'll get to that, but yeah, Aquaman was one of the more humorous characters. I don't think he had enough room to really shine, but he definitely reminded me of the brave and bold version of Aquaman. Just that type of humor, or whatever, that chip on your shoulder. Rebel without a cause type thing.
Yeah.
With more spin on it.
Do you want to discuss Aquaman then? I mean, I think he might be the one I have the least to say about, but.
Okay.
I enjoyed him. He was, I like your point. I said earlier, Superman's a supporting character in this film, but you are totally right where his story and I guess therefore his character are the focus. I think Aquaman had the least to do, maybe. His standout scene was when, they go to Atlantis, have that fight. Mera is there. And
Okay, so I'll say something really quick. I saw this movie twice. I didn't see that scene till the second time because I went to the restroom and I rushed back, and that's how quick that scene was over.
Yes.
I didn't even know that scene happened because when I left, he was at the bar. And then when I got back, he was talking to Mera under the water. I didn't think there was a battle or anything because I didn't think they could have fit that in the time I pissed.
Yeah, they did.
Didn't walk and rush back. But yeah, obviously a lot got cut. Even if you look at the trailers, there's a scene where he's going up to the statue of King Atlantis. There's also Volko, or whatever, William Dafoe's character.
Yeah, completely cut.
Not in it. There are a lot of other things, and I get that they did it for time, and once again, this is Warner Brothers maybe taking too much criticism to heart. If they were going to do a 2.5-hour movie, this probably would have been the one that was best served by it. That said, I didn't feel like a lot of people said it was rushed. I feel like, a little bit, but I feel like there's more character development in this movie than in Avengers. And I think I got to know them more than Avengers. I saw the movies preceding it, so I knew about the characters, but their first movie was on a ship, and that's it.
You have to have more character development in this movie, especially with Flash, Cyborg, and Aquaman, because they haven't had films previously.
Well, you should always treat it, even if you have films preceding it, you should treat every film like it's someone's first, while not treading material that people already know by seeing the preceding film. And so you should still be able to, even with new lines and stuff, and that's what I felt like they kind of did. Don't get me wrong, DC is still working against the current because they rushed this, They would have been much better served by either releasing solo films, but then they would have been judged by copying Marvel, if they did that. So maybe if they did like a Justice League 2-part story and then did the solo films and had a strategic plan in place.
That was originally the plan, I thought, too. Remember, They were supposed to have the big one first and then the smaller ones.
Right, but they don't really know, and they seem to be kind of making up as they go along. I have confidence. I think they're going to find their footing, and I'm reassured by this multiverse that they're talking about, because that's what I like about DC. Marvel, it does make sense that because they were all created roughly around the same time. We've talked about this numerous times. DC, these characters come from, there's 20-year gaps between some of their creation times, or if you're talking about like Silver Age or Golden Age Flash.
Absolutely.
And so it does make sense that they, you can make them fit like in a movie like Justice League, but then it makes sense that Batman doesn't have the Justice League sometimes in a solo film, or it works well. It works really well with a multiverse in DC world. So I really hope they stick with that. I would love to see them explore, especially what they're talking about, that solo Joker film. But anyway,
yes,
Aquaman.
Agreed. Well, I mean, he's the one who's just, I guess, kind of there. So, I liked Momoa as Aquaman. He's not. I really like the cheesy Aquaman, but you can make the cheesy Aquaman done seriously. Like, forget the writer's name in the mid-2000s, but also Jeff Johns did it too.
Do you not think they succeeded in that respect in this movie?
I think they did it. I think they did the character well, to bring a character like Aquaman, who's the butt of so many jokes, to the big screen. But he didn't seem like King of Atlantis to me, which is what he is.
My problem with him is not. I didn't need to see more of his back. I got it with those scenes. Is that it needed a little bit more of the fish in it, I guess, because really he was just Superman without, like, he kind of flew even, and that was kind of my problem, or jumped, really. I don't even know what the hell was going on in that spine leg, but I mean, there are a couple of scenes where he stops the water in the tunnel, and there's obviously that very quick battle in Atlantis. And then the way is splashing up to him that didn't knock him on his ass, I guess, could be themed his powers, but they didn't really showcase what he does, other than he's really strong and has a pitchfork, as Batman says, and that was my problem. Like, they could have easily, scrapped some of the red CGI and put it near an ocean or something, just to have a whale come up and do something at one point or something.
It was even made into a joke, like his ability to, he has a telepathic ability where he can communicate, and I think I don't know if it's only aquatic life, forgive me. I think he can do it with a lot of different things, but...
He says it in the movie, they talk through the water. Like, because Batman asks him, can you put out some kind, and that's another one of the humor, like added humor.
Yeah.
He puts out, can you talk to fish? And I talk through water.
But then he doesn't talk through water with Mera. They open up that fucking air bubble.
But it's using it different. He's trying to find the box, but you don't really see it. Like, he's just told that you ask him if he can put out something to look for this mother box. So you're left the impression that he does do that, but you don't really get to see it. And I feel like, if they're going to add a couple of scenes that, I agree, Aquaman showcasing his abilities would have been cool. I'm sure we'll see it in the solo film, but I think that's the next one coming out. And I overall liked his interpretation. I just didn't think we got enough of it. I liked the homage to his classic suit. In the first scene we see him, he takes off the coat and he's got that orange sweater on. And the green pants.
Absolutely.
I liked his attitude, then chugging down a bottle of Jack Daniels. Oh, this is on him.
And he's like clearly a do-gooder, bringing food to that village in, is that Iceland?
Yeah. And Jason Momoa is another one of those characters or actors that really seems to embody this role and is very happy in this role, and also leads like that admirable life.
Well, there is a huge backlash against him from the comment he made on that San Diego Comic-Con panel.
Oh, fuck Marvel. But that's what you're talking about.
No. Someone asked him what his favorite thing to do and if he lived in like the Game of Thrones world is, and he said rape women.
Oh, well, I mean,
he was joking, but
right, like, his character did rape women in Game of Thrones.
He absolutely did. Khal Drogo raped.
I think this social justice warrior shit gets a little too, like, I'm Democratic, liberal, but some shit like that, like, is a joke. You're watching a show that regularly showcases raping and pillaging, and you ask him a question about what his favorite part about that character, and he says it. Now it's deemed insulting. I don't get that. Right? I heard that.
It's a touchy subject, but I agree with you. So,
and even if you know like it more about him than that, like he generally like is a nice guy. Like, yeah,
I would be surprised if with this onslaught of accusations that Momoa would be one, but who knows? I don't think so.
Oh, no. Like, he made a joke, like, maybe didn't land correctly. He's not a comedian. Like, people need to, like, loosen up a little bit, I think. Like, he's not really raping people, everybody. Like, save your disdain for the actual rapist, I would guess. That'd be my thing. Especially when you're at a convention about a show that shows
features rape.
Yeah, right. So you obviously don't have a problem with that, right? You like the character that raped, but you don't like it when the actor says the word rape, I guess. I don't, whatever. Let's move on.
Yeah, let's move on from Aquaman.
Yeah. No, there's more like Aquaman.
Do you have more to say about Aquaman?
I thought I did. Maybe not. I don't know. Yeah, I thought there was another moment in there. I guess
moment?
My moment. I'm excited for the Aquaman movie.
I think there's a lot of potential there, especially seeing the Atlanteans assist the Amazonians, in that flashback. I think that could be done really well if you make it a fantasy epic, maybe akin to something like Lord of the Rings or Game of Thrones. I think would be the right thing to do with that.
It's just Ocean Man. Did they say if Black Manta's in the movie too?
He better fucking be, because Black Manta's his fucking arch nemesis, and that's actually Black Manta. I think is one of the most underrated villains in comic bookdom.
Yeah, Ocean Master though I know is in it, so I don't know if they'll save Black Manta. I can't remember, but I think I like the interpretation in this film. Oh, that was the one thing I was going to say. It was more like a Batman thing. But you got a little bit of allusion to his detective skills because, it's kind of like that Sherlock Holmes, like paying attention to your surroundings. He's trying to figure out, like, who this Aquaman is. Jason Momoa says something in the Icelandic tongue. Everyone laughs, and he looks past someone and sees, like, a figure that looks like Jason Momoa.
Right. I was joking, like, if he was holding a bottle of whiskey in that drawing, it would be like...
Yeah. Maybe that's a little liberal or a loose definition of detective work, but I think for the majority of, a lot of detective work is just paying attention to your surroundings.
Absolutely.
And that's all it is. And that was a good, subtle way to just give Batman a little bit of detective skills in this thing. I think most people wouldn't have maybe caught that if they were in, Batman's shoes, but he did. So... Flash then, or Cyborg? You want to talk about?
Let's say Flash for last and touch on Cyborg. I think I really like Cyborg.
I was pleasantly surprised with Ray Fisher's acting. I think he would have a great, he's like the next Lawrence Fishburne or Samuel Jackson. Like he's got that great voice.
I really agree. I think that dude's got a future ahead of him.
He was a little bit more melancholy than even Bruce Wayne. He was moping around the entire time. But I bought
you fucking just became a robot person, and you're dealing with. It totally makes sense. It's
if you've ever become a robot person, you know what it's like.
He's fucking like RoboCop vibes going on there, but it's a crazy situation, right? When your dad works for Cadmus and you're like, I did what I had to, which is make my boy into a robot. And the development of the powers is really cool, to see. And, him just not wanting to do it, but ultimately, embracing it and really becoming a really strong member of this Justice League.
Yeah, I liked what he said too. Like, I've got a language in my head that's not my own. It's not even a human. And he's trying to figure out, unscramble all this, and then he's just sitting there. And I thought it could be done a little bit better, but he's sitting there and he's just connected to everything. He says, it's just sensory bombardment. He's connected to everything, and he hears someone say his name, Vic Stone, deceased, as Alfred when he was talking to Batman. So he's plugged in, and he searches a little bit further, like who was talking about him, and discovered this Batman. Now, personally, I think it could have been done a little bit better than just the screenshot of, did Batman take a screenshot of himself from his laptop computer with him in the bat suit and sans cowl? Like, why would there be this picture on Batman's computer? Like, if anything, it would be cooler, for him to just have a moment of unscrambling IP addresses and doing it that way, or be just, then hacking into the bat computer and seeing maybe a video footage, he hacked into the camera and seeing Alfred standing there next to Bruce Wayne, and then maybe some facial recognition and get Bruce Wayne while he's wearing half of the bat suit.
Well, I thought that was a freeze frame from camera footage is how I interpreted that. I didn't. It seemed more like stock footage. I think it could have been conveyed better, is all I'm saying. I didn't have that leap of logic. It seemed because there's another photo in there too. There's a photo of the Batmobile. There's another photo too, of the bat. So it's it's like the fappening with the iCloud hack. I'm half expecting to see some naked pictures of Ben Affleck, doing some. In the mirror, with the camera pointing, right?
Showing up and seeing it, trying to plus it. 7 pictures back to back where it gets a little bit bigger. He checks his angles a little bit, tries to get the right lighting so it looks nicer, that kind of thing. I just think it could have been, they could have taken 3 more seconds to make it seem like he was doing some detective work or searching rather than, oh, what's this? I flipped my hand and, oh, Bruce Wayne's got a screenshot. They didn't even show him taking the screen grabber, scouring through video footage is all I'm saying,
I guess you're right, and maybe that would have conveyed it better, but as a fan of Cyborg from, the Titans run, I'm familiar with what Cyborg can do, and that's definitely
But not everyone is.
Correct. You're right.
And all of the characters, probably he's the least known about. I would even say that I know less about him than any of the other Justice League characters. I'm not the biggest fan of Cyborg. But that said, there were plenty of moments where he's definitely the source of exposition. He definitely is sitting there explaining things. It's cool. He's got this little Phantom of the Opera vibe going. I think Ray Fisher knocked it out of the park with his acting. I will say the CGI costume was very distracting. It didn't.
I wasn't bugged by it whatsoever. And I was ready to be. And for a good portion of this movie, he's wearing that hoodie disguise. So maybe that's part of the reason.
He's got that Tony Stark glowing chest and everything, and that was fine. But I hated it. The only reconciliation I have is at the end. You see him, and he's refining his look, and he's getting more like I've said before, this Apple created Cyborg, and it's a little bit more sleek. And I get the messiness. I just wish he figured that out a little, and maybe as he was getting his powers, it just gradually became a little bit sleeker, until we had the third act, and he looked more like Cyborg from the comics. It was just, it's just too busy. When it's too busy, it's hard to convey, that natural look to it. And especially when you got a bunch of shiny things moving and all these intricate parts. There's always going to be a moment, a part of that doesn't look real. Even if it's the jowl piece, the chin collar that doesn't sit right, or just the glow from his eye light that doesn't hit his face correctly, or there's always something about it that just throws me out for even if it's just a second when he was on screen. And it's a shame because I loved everything else that he brought to that role, and he had no control over that, and it really took me out of his acting and his character. And I do have higher hopes for his solo film because, like I said, at the end of the film, they show him kind of fixing his costume. I just wish they did it a little earlier in the film.
Yeah, I'll agree with you on those points. I was just able to look over some of that stuff, and the moving parts thing, like the constant stuff, yeah, it's distracting. I did like some of the parts where he's able to adjust his hand into like a tool or something like that. And I really, him like syncing up with the mother box, I thought was great, and it was a really effective use of his character, and clearly was written well, because he actually, he really does stuff in this movie. And, like him communicating through the computer, I really enjoyed that part too. He pleasantly surprised, I guess, is what you said and what I agree with.
I agree for the most part. I will say he did get a lot of his scenes cut as well. Like, there are plenty of scenes with him. Like, there's supposed to be a scene with him talking to his mother, scene, like, with him as the football player that was shown in the trailer.
Yeah, I would have appreciated that.
Yeah.
Maybe even if it's just him, like, daydreaming. Like, I really love RoboCop, and there's, like, Murphy's having those flashbacks to when he was a human, and, like, with his family and stuff. That could have been done really well with him flashing back to stuff.
The freaking fake, just a plastic suit would have looked better than what they did. Like, I love RoboCop from, 1988?
That suit, that movie holds up so well, Joe. I watch it annually.
I love that movie.
Yeah.
And but just some sound effects and just a plastic suit, and that looks a million times better than what they gave us with this CGI shit. I don't know. Hopefully they do it with the solo film. Flash. Flash?
He was not the Barry Allen that I've come to know and love from the comics, but he was, I think a good Flash for this movie. He was.
He was closer than the Grant Gustin stuff. Like, everyone was talking about how they wanted Grant Gustin, and I'm like, no, I don't. Like, Grant Gustin, his budget, he's got that giraffe neck, and he's all lanky.
Is that the Flash from the show? I've never seen the show.
Yeah. The show's all right. But for a CW show, it's all right. But all right, so here's my biggest grievance, and it says Ezra Miller is so clearly gay. I do not find it plausible that he is not gay. And it'd be one thing if they gave us a gay Flash. I'd be fine with that. But there are plenty of moments where he's stammering, enamored with Wonder Woman's beauty. There's a great scene where he accidentally falls on Wonder Woman, and he's, like, resting his head against her breast, and
I
then zooms away and just acts like it didn't happen. So he's clearly not gay. Like, Iris West is his girlfriend. She was cut out of the movie. Like, maybe, if they didn't have those Wonder Woman scenes thrown in there, maybe I would have even thought maybe she's just a friend, and they're not, boyfriend, girlfriend. He's just so clearly gay. It'd be like if they cast Liberace as Batman. Like, it's just, he doesn't know how to play nerd without being gay. And once again, nothing wrong with being gay. But
George Takei is playing Green Lantern.
Right,
yeah.
Overall, I liked it. His portrayal, like his nerdiness, his awkwardness.
It's like almost borderline, like he's like high functioning autistic is like how I thought of him. Speaking of quick aside, have you ever seen the movie with him where he plays the psychopath child?
I don't think so.
I forget the name of it. It's got. Oh my God.
He's a great actor. I've seen a lot of
this movie's really good, Joe. I'm going to recommend it to you. I think you'll really like it.
But yeah, even like his whole like brunch diatribe, I think out of all the people, like he had more jokes that fell flat than the other people. I mean, he had a lot of great jokes and great moments, but I just think he was just so annoying. Like when he was talking for me, like, and once again, like
he's supposed to be in a way.
Right, to a certain degree. It wasn't nerdy. It was like, gay and nerdy. And once again, it's not a bad thing. I don't want people getting mad. Like, it wouldn't be bad if he was gay in the movie. Then I could be like, oh, yeah, he's gay and he's a nerd. But the fact that he's not gay, then it's just so glaringly for me, like, he's clearly gay. Like, I mean,
I didn't really pick up on that as much as you have seemed to.
I don't know. I saw it twice, and it was less noticeable the first time, and I saw it again. And it's not even like, even if I knew nothing about Ezra Miller, I just the way he played it, I would have been like, I would have looked him up after, like, is this guy gay? Like, I just don't think, like, it just didn't be, like, a lot of, I think that was what messed it up with me. Like you say, maybe a little bit of autism in there too, like the whole brunch thing. It didn't strike me as funny. It was more like annoying, like just shut up. There were other things that worked well, like, you know, we see in the trailer with him meeting, Bruce Wayne, Batman. I think that all worked well.
I do too. People are comparing it to Tony Stark and Spider-Man, but
yeah,
you might need that kind of relationship in this movie.
Yeah, like even like the line, like I just usually push people and run away. Like the whole, we already talked about the race between Superman and the Flash.
Hold on real quick.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. So that part where he's like, I usually just push people, and then Batman says to him, that was, I think, a really endearing. So when they go and it's like their first big encounter with Steppenwolf, and Batman's explaining to him what to do. He's like, go in and save one person, and he does. And then he goes and does it again. And it was Batman building up this confidence. It's almost like I wish we had seen a Batman and Robin, you know, with like him teaching him how to be a part of a team and how to embrace his powers. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, and I think, like, I don't want to, like, once again, like, I feel like backtrack. I think a lot of his lines work. I overall liked Ezra Miller as the Flash. I think, but I think a lot of it fell flat for that reason. I think he needs to figure out, like, the right balance of annoyance and nerdy and, like, how to portray a straight person. And I think he would be a perfect Barry. I loved everything. The only other problem I had with Barry Allen, though, is just too much special effects in the Speed Force. Like even like with that Superman thing that I liked, it was just, like I said before, I think the best iteration thus far came from the X-Men movies with Quicksilver, and I still think it's the best iteration because they didn't have all this crazy CGI. The first movie with Quicksilver in it. The second one had some bad CGI too, but
yeah, his scene in the first one, I like his scenes in both of them. Quicksilver steals those movies, and in a way, I think, for me at least, it seems I like Flash a lot more than you did. He stole his scenes, and I really appreciated Flash's story and, you know, dealing with his father and you know, going to visit him and all that stuff.
But even that, the way he delivered that line, once again, like that's not how a straight man would deliver that line. Like, never. I can't even do it because I'm not gay. Like, just said, never say that again. Like, I get there's emotion behind it, but it just, I don't know. Like, I'm not saying gay in a bad. He's not. The character isn't gay, so it's just weird. It strikes me as weird, and maybe I'm more sensitive to it because. Like for you and Green Lantern, like Flash is a close second for me and Batman. Like I love it. I was looking very forward to this, and overall I liked it. I liked his portrayal. I like Ezra Miller generally. The costume was fine. I think it was a little too elongated headish, but I guess that's for aerodynamics. Okay.
And I liked how Bruce kind of explains, he's like, oh, that suit, that's what they use on the space shuttle for re-entry. So, like, it makes sense even though it's more heavily armored than the Flash costume that I would have preferred.
Right. And I think we'll see, like, a sleeker one, you know, maybe as he gets the Bruce, the Tony Stark role in maybe the solo film. I'm still very excited. I like Ezra Miller's interpretation better than Grant Gustin's. I like that they added the Wally West thing with him having to eat because he burns a lot of calories.
I love that little reference.
That was one thing I missed from the show. They don't do that in the show, but they did that in the 90s show. that I loved. He was constantly just eating.
Yes, he needs to. He like it fucking makes sense. I really appreciated that too.
Yeah, I just hope they have better effects budget with the Flash solo film and less obscuring things to make it look less like crap when it in reality makes it look more like crap. And I get a little lightning, but I don't want to obscure so much.
There was a lot of lightning, man. It was like almost like...
They really need to take a note for once from the X-Men movies. I generally do not like those movies, but they hit it out of the park with like Quicksilver. I think Quicksilver's costume in the Avengers movie, mixed with the speed, how they interpret the moving fast from the Fox X-Men movie, and give us that in the Flash solo film. And Coach Ezra Miller on what straight people talk like.
I really liked, I'm going to just kind of say, I really liked his and Cyborg's dynamic, especially when they're digging up the grave. What's that called again? When you dig up a grave, there's a word for it.
Grave robbing?
No, it's
Are you talking about necrophilia?
No.
That's fucking...
Hold on, this is gonna bug me if I...
Necromancy?
No, it's not necro, it's exhume. When you exhume a body. There you go.
Okay.
So that was enjoyable. It's really good camaraderie with all the...
Do you think both of them could have done it faster, like Cyborg?
That's what I was thinking.
I know Flash has a line that says, I could do this faster, but it seems disrespectful. And as Cyborg, I'd be like, fuck, man, you're making me dig. Do this faster. Like, it's already disrespectful no matter what we do. Just do it. But I did like the banter, like you said, like the where the accidents and all that. And they are the accidents in this.
Yeah. Well, I guess you can argue that Batman's an accident too, right?
I guess he's more like the regular. He doesn't have any superpowers. He's kind of like him and maybe Green Lantern fit together because they have the tools. They're regular men with tools. You know, they didn't get superpowers through an accident.
Nor were they born with them.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Or they're not aliens or whatever. Yeah. So, I could see the Green Lantern maybe in Batman. And I don't know, Justice League too. Once again, I don't want to harp on. I did enjoy him. I enjoyed the Flash. I was very excited to see a live action Flash. That probably was the biggest draw into this movie. Is finally live action Flash on the big screen for me, and I overall was not disappointed. A couple moments fell flat for me. I think a lot of it, this movie was moving uphill. Like it had a lot of shit right out of the gate. Following up a less than stellar performance in the previous movie, following critical reception, loss of the director, Henry Cavill's mustache, everything else. It really had an uphill battle, and I think it succeeded despite all that. Ignore the naysayers, go see it yourself. Yeah, I think we have one more character to talk about, and then
is it Steppenwolf?
Yeah.
He was the villain.
He was a villain. Not much else to say about him. He was a villain.
He's a god, new god.
Yeah, I'm kind of tired of all these generic. I missed the line from the trailers, and I that would have been a great moment to just add some menace. He's like, no more lanterns, no more Kryptonians, like this world is ours or something like that. That in the trailer, that was the kind of like the bone-chilling moment for me, and that kind of got me psyched for this character. A character that I'm not was somewhat familiar with, not really, like a little bit, but he's got. I wasn't minded by the CGI. A lot of people were complaining about it. I mean, I don't think it was necessary to a certain degree. It looked more like claymation. I know it's CGI, but it looked more three-dimensional than a lot of other CGI in the movie and many others.
He wasn't distracting for me, and I'll say that. And and as much as he's not the best villain, clearly his role in the film it serviced the film, right? It's a reason for this team to just band together, which is what it, made them do. And I'll say this too, when it gets to the end and it's, and like every fucking movie now, that CGI fucking cartoon fest, I was happy that it ended pretty quickly. Like as soon as Superman shows up, it's basically over. I'm glad it wasn't dragged out.
Yeah, I will say that about every Marvel movie practically. I'm always like falling asleep in the third act. Like I may like the movie, like I feel like
did it too. BVS did it too. Wonder Woman did it too.
It's true. Wonder Woman, I feel, did it. I didn't feel that way about BVS, but I know a lot of people did. So I think, like, generally speaking, like Marvel have a lot more movies out there that follow the same pattern. And out of all the movies, I generally like the movie up until the third act, and I just want to walk out because it's just a bombardment of CGI. It's the same generic character, the same, like, at least this one, like, I'll tell you one thing that sets it apart from Marvel movies is you had that ironic ending where, like, he's got these parademons feeding off of fear, and now all of a sudden he's afraid of the Justice League, and they feed on his character. Like, that's something you don't get in a Marvel movie. They, like, pretty much just eat him alive right in front of them. While they all watch. Like, you'd never see that in a Marvel movie. They would never have, like, a turnaround like that, like bookended like that. It would just be like, we're taking you to jail or whatever it is, or Loki will be back again in Avengers 4 or whatever. Like, they don't have, like, I would say, like, I think it was a missed opportunity to just give it to Darkseid. Like, no one knows who Steppenwolf is. Just make Darkseid the villain. Everyone knows who Darkseid is, the comic book fan. Like, I mean, you didn't need it. Like, it just seems more like hedging your bet, like knowing you're going to have another movie, so you're going to do the same thing again, but you're going to give everyone the villain they wanted the first time.
Well,
whereas just this villain, and then next time you can do Injustice League. Next time you can do Brainiac. No one wants to see. No one was there. Like, I really hope they do Steppenwolf.
No,
and no one was excited.
I would have rather had like fucking Starro or something, you know. But
I think that's too much for people to handle for the first Justice League movie.
Sure.
I think Darkseid would have made it like epic, and you could have done the exact same thing.
Yeah, but here's the thing, Joe. Darkseid is Darkseid's fucking really powerful, and I think if we do get a Darkseid, we're gonna see them like be transported to Apocalypse, and I think that might be the difference there. I would not if they had if Darkseid had been replaced, or Steppenwolf had been replaced with Darkseid, and it had ended the same way. I would think that would have been a disservice to Darkseid as a character.
I don't know. Yeah, but I don't know. I'll throw this in with Steppenwolf too. Like the biggest problem I had with this movie is they keep going back and forth to this one Russian or Ukrainian family.
Yeah,
and without any explanation really, like other than like that's where it's going to start. But then why did we need to see them? Why do we need to flash back to them so many times? I mean, there are other people in this village, but they just show us the one family over and over again.
It was so you can empathize with someone.
They could have done it in a lot better way. I mean, even if they didn't need to keep showing it to us, like how many times did they flash back to this family? I mean, couldn't you put character development in instead? Couldn't you show? It just didn't seem to have this world-ending, like the threat, the menace wasn't there with Steppenwolf. It was never fully conveyed just how much damage this guy's going to do. They said that he's going to destroy the Earth and the mother boxes combined, and his unlimited power, and that he's trying to take over the Earth, but it would have been cooler to hear that from Steppenwolf a little bit more, and I mean, you could have added a lot of the menace and used that time in a more effective way other than showing us the same Ukrainian family over and over again, boarding up their house and looking. I kept looking for a payoff sooner. Like there was a moment when Cyborg went to go get the mother box, and then they flash back to that Ukrainian family, and both times I was in the theater, I thought, oh, this is the moment where the mother box must have been buried underneath the house, and Cyborg gets it, and then the parademon go away. And then I realized, no, wait, Cyborg has the mother box, so why are they showing us this scene again? No reason. I don't know why they're showing us this scene again. That was my biggest problem. with this movie, and it happens way too much.
Yeah, that wasn't the best part of the movie. I didn't have that big of a problem with it because I know the reason they did it was so that you had this family that I said empathize with, but I meant sympathize with. But
did he show people? I still didn't get the I wasn't I can't say empathizing for some reason, but I wasn't empathizing with them. I was just more bored with it. Like, it didn't do the job that it was set out to do. I mean, I think you're obviously empathizing with, like, when people are dying. Like, just show, like, destruction. Like, just show, like, what he's doing to the world. Then, there would have been a million other better ways to show that than this. It really was glaringly, like, it fucked up the flow of the movie. It halted the action. It confused more than me, like, other people. It's a minor quibble, like, when it's all said and done, but it definitely is one of the problems, I would say, with this movie. And I, once again, still love the movie, still recommend it, but that scene annoyed me a lot. It wasn't just one scene. It was like 5 times.
Yeah, at least we get like a fun payoff at the end, though, where Flash saves them and he's so happy, and then you see Superman flying by with that whole fucking apartment building.
You could have just shown that scene and it would have been the same payoff. You didn't need to show the 4 preceding scenes telling you nothing about
you're probably right.
Like, he didn't tell you anything about them. It wasn't like Lois Lane in Jeopardy and you know about Lois Lane. It's a Ukrainian family that doesn't speak English, that barely says anything. A couple lines in subtitles, and they have a house in a shitty part of town. I don't know what I got out of that. Nothing. I don't know. Anyway, 7.5. I don't know. Yeah, somewhere around there. 8. I don't know.
Yeah, it's like a 7.5 or an 8 for me. It really is, and it's my favorite of the new DC universe of films so far. Above and beyond even Wonder Woman for me.
I look forward to when we get to do our commentary on Batman v Superman, because I feel that'll be my Dark Knight Rises. I feel I'll be defending the movie. Yeah. So. Wrap it up.
Excuse me, I'm coughing. I was sick before, and I really haven't shaken this cold. And Daniel, I said earlier, is sick too. So I don't know if we're just going to keep passing this virus back and forth to each other. We should probably stop kissing.
Yeah, making out all the time. I had a cold for like 2 months, and now everyone's sick around me. So hopefully, I just got it early. I'm excited. My Blu-ray complete collection of Halloween arrived finally today.
Nice.
So, I watched Halloween 4, and it looks spectacular.
Did you, does that come with the producer's cut of Halloween 6?
Have you ever seen the producer's cut?
I have once. I used to have a friend who was a Halloween nut, and I remember it was my first Wizard World I ever went to. He bought a bootleg copy of it, and he was just going on and on, and I'm like watching it, and I'm like, this movie fucking sucks.
The bootleg copy, like, they released it since then on Blu-ray, so it's a lot better. Both versions of the movie suck, but both have different strengths. Like, both. And for me, like, that was one of the movies I remember renting as a kid from Blackwood. It was, I think, like, one of the scariest of the Halloween movies, despite all of the glaringly bad plot points and everything else.
Michael Myers standing around at the very end, like, oh.
Yeah. I don't know. I enjoyed some things about it. It's got moments. It's got scenes that are great, but the movie as a whole, both versions are definitely not the strongest points of the franchise. But,
so is this new one? I think it is. The new one's going to ignore H2O, isn't it?
It ignores everything except the first one.
The first... So, does it ignore the second one?
Yes, because the second one introduces Laurie Strode as his sister.
That's right.
He's not his brother, or Laurie Strode's brother, in this new movie, which I think is a great way, because it just kept going deeper and deeper down this well.
Yeah.
So he could only haunt this one family, whereas in the first movie, he was just, there's a babysitter. My sister set on her, I'm going to kill her. And that's
yeah, it makes, so let's say there was only Halloween 1 and 2 with Michael Myers, and like that's the end of it. It makes sense. But then when you kept going like they did, like I think it's a shame Season of the Witch did so poorly, because I actually liked that movie, and the anthology idea of having different stories every year would have been fascinating to me. And you know, c'est la vie, that it didn't work out. And then you have a completely convoluted and series of fucking movies.
I like my slashers. Like that's why I say I think I like the suit. I call it the superhero slasher. Like where it's kind of like the comic book movie of like the 80s, where you have these characters that just exist in these franchises. It doesn't always make sense. So I'm not expecting Oscar contenders. It's just these characters that are placed in bad movies with annoying characters, and they go and kill them. You know, Jason, Freddy, Michael, Leatherface. So, you know, I personally am glad that Michael Myers stuck around for the franchise. In retrospect, like the Halloween 2 came about at the time of like Star Wars and the Luke, I Am Your Father, like right around then. So everyone was always sibling or something for a while, and it still kind of does that kind of twist that everyone expects. And it worked for Halloween 2, but then, like you say, when you had to pick up from there and continue the story, it definitely painted them in a corner.
Totally. But Donald Pleasance, right, is Loomis. His constant his turn at Halloween chat. Yeah, he was one of the best parts of all that, and it's a shame that his last role was Halloween 6.
Yeah. Well, you know, that's the other thing. Like, none of the other slashers have that misfit character, and I think that's great. Like, they've tried, like, with Friday the 13th and Tommy Jarvis, but you need consistently, like, an opposition to that malevolent force. And, yeah, Loomis is awesome. Anyway, let's wrap it up here. This has been Bruce Wayne's World.
This has been Bruce Wayne's World, episode, I'm James Terzis. 62.
Yeah.
And shame on you if you don't go see Justice League.
Yeah, you know, message us on Facebook or whatever, and tell us your
Facebook, Bruce Wayne's World, at Bruce Wayne World on Twitter. Shockingly, I've actually been extremely active on there lately, so it's fun to engage with our fans. And then also go to thebatmanuniverse.net, and there's a Patreon contest, or there's something going on with Patreon this month where you can win a prize or get a bonus if you just send like $5 a month, which is really cool. So,
okay, well, bye.
But I guess that's it, Joe. I will talk to you later.
All right then.
Bye.